Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Wednesday morning room with Tim Sullivan and me, Maya Matsuoka, as your hosts and moderators. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time on Clubhouse. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. So today we have Max Salman, one of our very beloved guest speakers. We have had Mac for a couple of times already. And Mac is really very special because he managed to actually pivot a couple of times. Once it was before the pandemic, but the second time was during the pandemic. And he has managed also to grow his business very well. Of course, it is an ongoing process, and I'm sure that Mac's businesses, both of them, will continue to grow. But, we'll see how it happens. And of course, I'm always very eager to hear what Mac has been doing and how the business is going. So, Mac, I'm not going to keep anybody waiting anymore because I'm sure that people already know you, either from LinkedIn or YouTube or from Twitter or even, from our rooms here on Clubhouse. So let's start and we'll continue later on with questions, answers, comments, and so on. The mic is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Maya, for that very flattering introduction. It's been quite interesting because since you started, doing these rooms and very kindly inviting me on to share some of my journey and also to learn from the listeners as well, and hopefully to inspire some people too, then that's kind of tracked the post-pandemic development of my businesses. So it's kind of always interesting for me as well to check in with you guys, and it kind of makes me think, okay, sometimes we can all get very bogged down in the more negative aspects of life, but it makes me think actually things may be hopefully moving on the right path. So speaking of that path, as Maya said, I basically have two brands which I operate. One is a tour business called Maction Planet. That's Mac and Action portmanteau together, inspired by many of the Japanese names that we have here, which are strange shoving togethers of two syllables or two words to make a whole new one. I don't think I've ever mentioned that on this place before, but it was definitely inspired by the kind of, Brad Pitt is Burapi and other things like that. So Maction Planet. And then during the pandemic, I decided to share my love of Japan's drinks, be that Japanese sake, shochu, whiskey, energy drinks, or whatnot, on a separate platform, which is actually almost coincidentally called Kanpai Planet. I don't intend to own the Planet brand. It just seemed like for a channel whose subtitle was The World of Japan's Drinks, Planet seemed an appropriate name. So here we are now with these two kind of brands operating. And I think the last time that I spoke on this platform, Maya, Japan's borders were in the processes of opening up. So I guess now we can fast forward a few months and check in on exactly, how tourism is doing in this country. So what was interesting to me is the numbers in October 2019 showed about 20% relative to October 2022. So basically, October 2022 was 20% of the tourists that we had 3 years earlier. And that was with the country still effectively closed, except for to group tours and business on from the 1st to the 11th of October. So that was very, very interesting to me, and it bode very, very well. And that was also without the biggest tourist market for Japan, which is China. So of the 31.8 million visitors that we had in 2019, about 9 million were actually coming from China. So even without that, we managed to return to 20% of the numbers from 3 years before. And that basically was a massive signal to me that we were going to have a huge recovery in tourism in 2023. And that, from judging by my bookings, judging by talking to colleagues in the industry and looking at industry numbers, seems to be exactly what is happening. It really is quite incredible. I guess there's going to be a number of reasons for that. The most easy, if you were writing some newspaper article about this, would be the pandemic and just the pent-up demand from not just first-time visitors, but also repeat visitors, people who wanted to come back to Japan, having come during the huge period of tourism growth from 2011 to 2019. Then being basically unable to express their desire to return to the land of the rising sun during the last 3 years. We also have a lot of new visitors to the country as well, and then also a lot of just postponed trips. So all of that is manifesting itself in an incredibly busy period. Plus, although flight prices have gone up, people's pent-up demand has meant that they're willing to spend more on their trip. So what I'm seeing is a huge, huge concentration of people who want to come during the cherry blossom period, possibly even more than in previous years. And that's causing issues for me, and I think it's causing issues for the industry as well. So Maya, I'll pause there for a second, because I know sometimes these things can just end up in big monologues, and see if you have any questions or comments, and then I can move on.
Oh, basically, I have a comment here, and I am happy that you mentioned that the demand actually has or is returning, and I believe that we're going to see even more of that as the Chinese visitors return as well. But at the same time, I think that the good news is that the repeat visitors are here too, because we all know that every destination actually wants to develop that market as well, because without repeat visitors, it's easy to exhaust actually the let's say the interest in any destination. And I wondered whether you have seen any of any developments in this side in this direction on the Japanese side.
Sure.
Before the pandemic, we knew that the concentration of foreign visitors was very strong. In just a couple of points. That was the Golden Rule. That was, of course, Tokyo, Kyoto, and so on. But now, have you seen any developments in this direction, so that more local areas are actually being visited, and probably they're promoting themselves as well and are being visited by foreigners at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic question. As you know, Maya, and maybe some other people do on the call, but not everybody does. One of the things that I did during the pandemic, one of the pivots, was that as a result of the time that I now had, unfortunately, I got involved in more travel consulting work around the country. So the government dishes out a huge amount of our tax money, our meaning anybody who's a Japan resident who is on this call, to prefectures, to towns, to villages, to different organizations. In fact, there are some businesses that have been very cleverly set up to try to siphon huge cuts of this tax money to basically help local areas improve their tour offerings, because there is this awareness that we want to get tourists away from the Golden Route, just to basically spread the economic benefits of tourism around the country. And I remember one particular project that I did with the Kyushu Tourism Promotional Organization, and asking them, well, listen, people are only going to visit Kyushu, Fukuoka, Kagoshima, Miyazaki in one of three contexts, right? They are either going to come back to Japan, having done the Golden Route for 2 weeks. They will then find out that there's lots to do in Kyushu, and they will come for a second trip. Or they will substitute part of it. So they will still come for 2 weeks, but instead of spending, say, 5 days in Tokyo and 5 days in Kyoto, they'll go, oh my goodness, there's so much to do in Kyushu. We're going to spend 3 days in Tokyo, 3 days in Kyoto, and then we're going to use 4 days, 2 days in Fukuoka, and say 2 days in Kagoshima. And the third one is basically extending their trip. So coming instead of for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, and then continuing past Hiroshima down to Fukuoka and into Kyushu. And the response I got was that they were targeting the extension market, as it were, people to make their trips longer. But as somebody who's visited 108 countries and been very successful when I worked for the Man, at sort of maximizing the utility of one's days off, be that paid leave or weekends or national holidays, there is, frankly, an impracticality in asking many people to take 3 weeks off to go to any one country. If you have a limited availability of annual leave and you're deploying 15 out of 25 days to go to one location, a lot of people aren't going to think like that. I can count on maybe one hand the number of 3-week holidays that I had, in the 20 years that I was in gainful employment, for a company. So for me, that wasn't the right answer. I think encouraging people to come back to Japan after maybe 2 or 3 years is a more practical way to spread that tourism around. And from my experience, what I'm seeing with the bookings that I'm getting in 2023, that is indeed happening. For example, I woke up this morning to an inquiry from some guests who I first met in 2019. They're going to be spending some time in Tokyo, but the son of the family is now older, and he's been reading some manga, and he's interested to visit Hakodate, which is a city in Hokkaido, the gateway city to Hokkaido. You can take the ferry over from Aomori. Also now they've built the longest undersea rail tunnel, actually meaning that you can take the bullet train up from Honshu, the main island of Japan, to Hokkaido. So, very, 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 very encouraging to see that, that interest is growing in some of the areas of Japan outside of just the Golden Route, and manifesting itself in very, very practical ways. And I think that's actually, Japan's soft power continues to grow, and it's actually through other interests, so maybe independent of all the efforts that the government is wasting. Did I say that? Spending our tax money on, independent of that, actually, I think is how you're going to get people traveling around the country.
Right. So, part of my question, the first question to you actually was whether, yes, you mentioned that the government is using, the tax money not really in a very practical way. So part of it actually, and it was part of it was anyway, whether there are any let's say, any campaigns run by, the National Tourism Organization or by other local offices here in Japan that target exactly that second time or third time visitors, because that was actually one of the greatest, let's say, shortcomings of all the previous campaigns run by the government up to the pandemic. So I can see that, you mentioned about Kagoshima. That's great. But have you seen that also at a state level? Or is it more in, the local areas, that's the local authorities that have actually woken up to this?
It's more actually at those. It's more at that grassroots level, where some of the smarter local authorities are deciding that this is going to be a more sensible use of our cash. One of the things that we have here in Japan is a great sense of equality and fairness. Of course, that manifests itself in many positive ways. But what it means is that money is divided and spread out all around the country. So basically everywhere gets a small amount to try to encourage visitors. Now, I'm a citizen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I've lived in Japan for 16 years. And I can tell you that there are many areas of the UK, frankly, that people should not visit. And so Japan perhaps isn't quite as dire as that Brexit voting hellhole, but within the Japanese archipelago, there's a lot of areas that I think where they may be interesting to visit for residents. For visitors to the country, they perhaps offer less interest. So what's been interesting to see is a realization of that by some of the smarter authorities who are then shifting the way that they're trying to market to encourage people to visit. Also, an understanding of more the competitive advantage of what different places have is helping. So I have been on a lot of what are called fam trips, so tours that are run where they then seek feedback and advice on how to improve their offering. And we've been fed the local mebutsu, which means the local food. And it's either been completely, I think, inedible. They've really doubled down on something which is just not going to appeal to the majority of palates, which is really what you're looking for here. Not that some one particular person doesn't like it, but that, there's widespread appeal. Or the local mebutsu is soba, and they're encouraging you to travel to the middle of nowhere to do a soba making experience, which you can do very well in Ginza in the heart of Tokyo, 1 minute walk from your hotel. So there's, it's good to see, again, amongst the more proactive and initiative taking local authorities, more of a shift away from, the same old bureaucrats churning out the same old nonsense because they're in that position for 2 years. They've drawn the short straw. They need to speak to the gaijin and actually an interest in the long-term development of their area. So that's that. And then maybe a nice pivot into my other project, Kanpai Planet, is that I think one thing I'm also seeing for some repeat visitors is more of a desire to explore some of their favorite niches in Japan. So where, for example, they would have come before and done a more general golden route style trip to Tokyo and then, Hakone, Kyoto, Osaka, maybe the day trip to Hiroshima. They're now saying, look, I'm super interested in manga. So I really want to double down on that interest. I'm super interested in video games. I want to double down on that interest. Food, and drinks. And that is, of course, a nice segue into my other project, Kanpai Planet, and some of the developments on that front. So Maya, before I talk about that, is there anything else you wanted to pick up on maybe the more travel side? And then I can talk a bit about what's been happening with me on Kanpai Planet.
Well, I actually wanted to share my experience exactly about localization. And when we talk about localization, it's the other way around here in Japan. So basically, local areas and a lot of people there, of course, they love their, let's say their towns and local food and so on. But they really need somebody there to help them realize that that's not what foreign visitors are actually looking for. Because I remember when I went on an inspection tour to that's the Ogasawara Islands, that was exactly, basically the one thing we needed to advise the local authorities how to actually package their product and what to offer there, so that foreign visitors would really want to go there. I mean, to travel that one day in one direction by boat, to visit the islands and enjoy that 1 week there. And I remember that on the menu when we first went there, the first day, everybody said, yeah, we have delicious turtle meat here, and everybody was like, oh, it's nothing. It's just not going to work with foreign visitors. So the sea turtle, sashimi, of course, we tried it and it was delicious, but the psychological barriers were very high. So eventually, that was something that, this is just one example, but something that they had to rethink and not to offer on the menu to those people visiting, especially from the Western countries. So yeah, it's important, but at the same time, I believe that there is also resistance within the local, let's say, authorities and the local people. Like, some people just take it personally. And the question is also how you get beyond that and, find a common ground where it's these tips of these pieces of advice are not taken personally and they are actually accepted. And, the package of the product there, the services is built upon them. Anyway, so this is just my
There are some people, though, I got to say, there are some people who are better at it than you and me. In my experiences over the last 3 years, and what I mean better is managing actually that process. I think me and you are probably a little bit too forthright, and maybe we care. It's like a good interview question answer. What's your biggest flaw? I just care too much. But I encountered some people. I'll recount this anecdote because it's amusing to me, and hopefully amusing to the listeners, which is the whole point. I remember going on one trip to Sasebo, and I was with a gentleman, and a British guy, and I asked him, "What are you doing later this week?" And he said, "Oh, I'm back in Tokyo for 1 day, and then I've got another fam trip to Nara." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Do you do a lot of these things?" He's like, "Yeah, about 1 or 2 a week." I'm like, "Oh," and he's like, he never did. So would you believe a lot of these things, you're going to the other side of the country, and it's felt that, I think this is another thing. It's felt that by some of the authorities, that the people who are on it are getting a free holiday, so it's not treated like work. So often, I've been on many fam trips where you're not explicitly paid for your time to go on that trip, and that's actually, I should say, not often the fault of the local authority, but the agency, the foreign, Japan travel company, is often taking such an insanely huge cut that they basically think, if we invite this assortment of travel professionals and English teachers, they're going to be so happy that we took them to whatever island, that we don't need to explicitly pay them for their time. But some of these people, they have become professional fam trip attendees. This gentleman never went on one that didn't have a stipend of at least 40,000 yen per day, and was very, very good. Spoke pretty decent Japanese, and was able to say everything that the people wanted to hear in terms of their feedback, which is a small tweak here and there, but essentially that they were doing, on the whole, a very, very good job. And I did think, maybe I should be more like this individual. But anyway, so yeah, some people have made a career, would you believe, out of being professional fam trip attendees. And to do that, you have to temper your honesty a little bit, and your desire to give, maybe the sort of feedback that would actually genuinely be helpful.
Yes, indeed. And that's a skill that can be developed. Some people just, they're better suited for that, for the developing of that skill anyway. So thank you for that. And then let's continue with with Kampai Planet, because I would love to hear about that as well.
Sure. So again, just a brief introduction. Almost exactly 2 years ago, to the day, on the 9th of February. So very apt that I'm here for this anniversary clubhouse. I started a platform focusing on Japan's drinks, Kanpai Planet. In fact, I used to say Japanese drinks, but there's a subtlety between Japanese and Japan that I've decided to go with the word Japan. Also, because, for example, I spent some time in the UK over Christmas and New Year, and I actually visited a sake brewery in London, also actually called Kanpai, using that brand, Kanpai London, who are making absolutely fantastic stuff. So I think it's great, just like we make whiskey in Japan. So it makes me very, very happy to see sake being made all over the world, and long may that continue. And these guys doing, under the leadership of Tom and Lucy Wilson, doing very, very smart stuff in terms of taking sake, but then knowing that they had to put their own spin on it, create their own style, and doing a really, really great job on that front. Anyway, so the World of Japan's Drinks was launched on the 9th of February 2021 with a video reviewing the sake that had been, well, not brewed by the Foo Fighters, the famous American rock band, but at least selected by the Foo Fighters, brewed by Tatenokawa Brewery up in the home of Ginjo in Yamagata Prefecture. Anyway, so that was my first video, and things went pretty well. They went pretty well in the sense that I put out regular content and managed to build up a reasonably loyal following, which now numbers, as a teenage YouTuber, this is always the first thing we have to say, please subscribe, but now numbers about 5,000 subscribers, about 1,500 followers on Twitter. And that built up, basically, that built up as a result of, putting out regular content, which I was able to do during the 2-week period. Sorry, the 2-year period during the pandemic. I was putting out a video roughly every 2 weeks. One of my biggest projects that I did was a documentary about sake making. So in the summer of 2021, I actually went to Sado Island and made sake for 1 week. And then that was filmed. And I paid a professional editor to make a documentary, imaginatively called Making Sake on Sado, which has been described by many sake experts as the most comprehensive look into sake making ever made. You can actually still order that sake from Obata Shuzo, who own the brewery school that I attended, and it's one of the few drinks on earth where you can literally watch it being made, what you're drinking from start to finish, over 2 hours and 15 minutes of sake documentary, and through the process learn a huge amount about how sake is made, but also learn about what an amazing place Sado Island is. So all of that content is available at youtube.com/KanpaiPlanet. Now, a lot of my tour guests have been entrepreneurs. And one of the conversations that they had with me when they toured with me from 2017 to 2019 was how to scale the business. Maction Planet, if there was one mistake I made from a scalability perspective, is putting my name in the name of the company. But I have found a way to scale, which is that I have handpicked a lot of guides from the guiding community in Japan. When I say a lot, I really actually mean not a lot at all. A very, very small handful. I've then gone on and spent time with them and trained them to be able to deliver the kind of experience that I think that visitors to Japan deserve, not to replicate entirely what I do, but to do something of what I feel is similar quality, but in their own style. And so that's the way that I've been able to scale up is basically by saying, when I'm already booked on a certain day, to say, well, actually, there are members of my team around the country who would be honored to give you the Maction experience. And then in terms of Canpi Planet, how would, everybody always talks about monetizing the platform. And it takes a while to do that. I decided to adopt the Gary Vaynerchuk approach. So Gary Vaynerchuk is a very well-known kind of American social media maven. And he talks a lot about basically building a platform. And then once you have the platform and once you have the influence, then, you will find miraculously that people discover what you do, and then opportunities to turn that platform and pivot more towards a business approach will appear. And so finally, near the end of 2022, some of these opportunities started coming my way. So I'm going to highlight a couple of them here. One of them was that I got approached by a distributor of sake from Nara Prefecture. Nara is very famous for the deer in Nara Park, the bowing deer, who will bow to you before they demand a shika sembe, a deer rice cracker, or cracker. I'm not quite sure what they put in these things. If you don't give them one, then they will just attempt to steal whatever is in your pockets. They're also famous for the giant Buddha of Todaiji Temple. Anyway, Nara is also considered by many to be the birthplace of sake, making temple sake. As you can imagine, something like understanding of making alcohol is a highly technical process that was often concentrated within the educated classes, and of course monks and priests were amongst those. So yeah, it shouldn't surprise anybody, along with the religious connections that sake has, that temples were a huge hotbed of sake production back in the 700s and 800s AD. And Nara was one of the very first places to start making sake in Japan. So I was approached by a company that wants to promote sake from the Nara region, and they sent me 5 bottles, and I reviewed them. I made it very clear that I was going to review them honestly. As it turns out, they were all pretty good, some better than others, and I made a video about that. Now, that was also interesting because the funding for that video, I think, was coming from some tax grant. So somebody somewhere had managed to get some money that needed to be channeled into promotion. So I had a very strict deadline to release this video of the 23rd of January. And it was made very clear that, nobody was going to get paid at any level unless this thing, dropped by midnight on that day. So there was a lot of scrambling to kind of get that done. One thing, if anybody's listening on here who is interested in making video, often people will want to have approval of the actual video. Meaning, you will script, and then you'll film, and then you will edit, and then you'll present something final. And of course, the people who are invested parties should always get, a chance to check the final product. But you've really got to be very careful. If people want to have editorial input at that stage, then you need to be charging them a huge amount of money. So as a good bit of discipline, you should always get people's input at the script stage and tell them that is basically it. Outside of like very, very, very cursory changes during the editing stage, scripting is when, they're able to voice their input. It will save you a ton of bother. I learned that from one of my great video editing mentors, and luckily that advice came in very, very handy. So that was one. Another interesting project that I got involved in. So as a result of having a presence on Twitter, I connected with a whiskey expert in Scotland, and he had been engaged by a hotel in Switzerland, a very famous hotel, who wanted to expand their Japanese whiskey offering to their premium customers. And he had been engaged to help source some bottles. But then, having sourced these bottles of Japanese whiskey, including some very expensive collections at auction, they wanted somebody to train them on the menu that they now had to be able to help the staff at the hotel to sell these whiskies in an engaging way to customers. And this guy had the good grace to say, well, I'm a Scotch whiskey expert, but my knowledge of Japanese whiskey to that level is not as good as, for example, Mac from Kanpai Planet. So he actually connected us, and we had a conversation, and then I did indeed, things worked out, and I delivered a 2-hour training session to a group of 50 staff at this hotel. The first half focusing on the history of Japanese whiskey, and then the second half focusing specifically on their menu, so tailoring the content to be able to help them to understand exactly what they had in their bar and how best to convey the romance and the storytelling to their customers. And that was, I thought that was quite an interesting project to get involved in, considering that the platform, was, 2 years is actually bizarrely still not a huge amount of time when you want to build a business. So I'm kind of, very happy with the state that Kanpai Planet had got to. My challenge now is how to juggle keeping that platform alive now that my main job of tourism has come back. Now, I'll stop there, Maya, and open it up for any questions.
Yeah, thank you. So I was going to ask you exactly that. How do you intend to actually do the two projects or continue, working on the two businesses after the visitors to Japan return? And obviously, I'm sure that you'll be getting even more offers with regards to the work you're doing with Kanpai Planet. So what are your plans? How are you going to scale up there?
Yeah, so I've got to say, I really don't know the answer to that question at the moment. My plan was to try to get ahead and make content in February that I can release, over the next few months. When I look at my bookings, basically, March and April, I'm guiding almost every single day during that 2-month period. Looking ahead to November, I've already been fully booked from the 4th of November to the 3rd of December, bar one day. And when I say fully booked, I'll be with people for 12 hours a day for each of those days. So, I'm struggling to see where it will come from. For the last 2 years, I've been meaning to set up a kanpaiplanet.com website. And I think that is probably the best use of my time right now. Unfortunately, I'm not finding the time to be able to do it. It's always easy to say set up a website, but anybody who's tried to do so knows that there is a lot of work in the background that needs to go into that project. But perhaps one thing that would help me would be a pivot away, not away 100%, but realizing that video is a high value asset. It's something that does take a long time to make. Each of my videos takes me at least 3 days to produce, about a day of scripting. And I mean, in total, there's all the questions to companies, the research that goes into that. So it often spreads out over multiple days, requiring a huge amount of planning to then get everything ready for the filming stage, which normally takes a day. And then editing takes a day to 2 days. So each video is taking at least 3 days, if not longer. Now, during that time, in 3 days, even at my slowest, I can write 9, decent blog posts. So perhaps having a website might be a way to still keep the brand alive and still get knowledge out there, but to do it in a way where you can get more bang for your time buck, as it were. So that's I think that's maybe one way to do things. The other one is just going to be an insane amount of time management. I mean, in 2019, I was either guiding or planning for my guiding, or kind of trying to planning, meaning conducting the admin of running the business, or trying to learn even more about Tokyo and places to take people, or in the small amount of free time I had, trying desperately to have a social life. And therefore, if you add something in like Kanpai Planet, it's got to take away from one of those four areas of time consumption. It's not going to take away from the touring, of course. It can't take away from the admin. I don't want it to take away from my desire to continually improve what I do. So it's got to come out of my free time. So if there are any people who I socialize with who are listening in to this, then just accept that you're going to see me a lot less in 2023.
Right. Well, that's not good news, but still, I think not for the people who want to see you in 2023, but it's good news for you. So the one thing that I want to say is that, of course, time management is very important, but also taking time away from time to time is very important for your health and well-being. So just a tiny piece of advice, please don't overwork. Please, because we want to see you, if not in 2023, at least in 2024,
Yeah, actually, that is something that I've tried to become more aware of. The mental health aspects of, running a business and running a project by yourself. It is very, very important. And I know these are sort of horrific cliches, but, to check in with yourself and to make sure that you are okay. Things can get overwhelming, especially when you're trying to juggle both the operation and the admin of a business. So, of course, maybe one thing that I need to do is essentially, hire somebody to help me run my platform, and also maybe do some other things that can help me juggle both projects. But that is also the entrepreneur's dilemma. So people talk about the fact that in order to grow out of a solo project, you need at some point to get comfortable that somebody else can do the job, maybe not 100% of what you want, but at least 80%. I've been very lucky to find the small handful of great guides who I feel can deliver the kind of experience that I want. But the first time I trusted somebody else to do a tour that was being run under my company was a I think in the run up to it, I didn't sleep properly for a week. So maybe the next step is actually to find some people who can help me grow what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's a dilemma, and I think that everybody who runs their own business goes through it. But I think that, learning to delegate is a difficult task, especially when you want things, to be perfect or close to perfect as possible. Yeah. And Mac, I just shared the link for your event on March the 26th. Would you like to tell us about it a little bit?
Yes, I would. So when I first started Maction Planet, which was back in February 2017, I wanted to celebrate. And I thought, what better way to celebrate than with a cherry blossom party? But I didn't want this just to be, me turning up in a field with some cans of Chuhai. I thought I wanted to do it properly. The first thing I did is contact my good friend and world-renowned shochu sommelier, Christopher Pellegrini, to make sure he was up for joining me in co-hosting this event. And the second thing I did is reach out to some breweries in Tokyo, because I wanted to serve draft craft beer in the park. And thankfully, one of my favorite breweries in the country, Baird Beer, well known to long-term residents in Japan, decided that they wanted to be part of the event. So we held our first collaboration, Hanami, back in 2017. It was a very popular event with about 35 people attending. We had big demand to repeat the event in 2018 and 2019, and indeed for 2020. But unfortunately, we all know what put paid to that, as it did in 2021 and as it did in 2022. So now, here we are in 2023, able finally to resurrect the event. It used to be branded as Maction Planet, my travel platform, and Shochu Pro, which was Chris's initial drinks brand. But now Chris has a podcast called Japan Distilled, so he's gone with that brand for the event. And as it is drinks related, I've decided to use the Kanpai Planet brand. So it's now the Kanpai Planet and Japan Distilled Hanami Party. And we've already sold over 70 tickets to the event. It's going to be held on the 26th of March in Yoyogi Park from around 11 a.m. till, well, we say 4, but believe me, it will go on for a lot longer, judging by previous years. You're going to have myself and Sam, who is the digital media manager of Baird Beer, serving craft beer. You're going to have Chris serving shochu. He's already revealed some of the shochu that we're going to be serving, and there's some incredibly rare bottles that we're bringing for this event. And there's going to be a few other surprises that we're going to be revealing in the next month to get existing ticket holders very happy, and also hopefully get even more people to enjoy this. Also, judging by some of the people who are coming, this is going to be a great networking event for people, for residents in Tokyo. And there's actually people who have planned their holiday around getting to Yoyogi Park for that day. So I cannot convey, hopefully my voice is conveying it, how excited I am for this event. It's going to be truly, truly fantastic. We've always been very lucky with the cherry blossom cover, and if the forecasts are to believe, then we could actually have timed it right to hit the mankai, the peak bloom in Yoyogi Park. So that's in the hands of Mother Nature. All we can control is that you're going to have a fantastic time.
Well, that's great to know. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to be there too. So to everybody who is here, if you have time on March the 26th, just join the party, because there is no doubt that yes, the experience of being there will be great. In addition to the cherry blossoms, of course. Tim, do you have any questions to Mac?
Before Tim jumps in, Maya, let me just say that we've done this tiered kind of pricing for this event, and actually yesterday we were going. The price for tickets jumps for the rest of the time between now and the cherry blossom party, but given that we've just had this conversation, I'm actually going to keep the existing discounted pricing open for another 24 hours, so that anybody who's listening into this and wants to join us can jump on and purchase a ticket. I think Maya has shared the link in the comments, so please jump in and I'll make that available for the next 24 hours.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's great. Candy wrote that the sakura may not be in full bloom. The forecast is in Tokyo, the first bloom that's March the 21st. But yeah, that's, of course, we can always read the forecasts, but we don't know whether they will be, they'll hold or not. So whatever, in addition to the blooming sakuras there, I think that the most important part actually on that day will be the experience of meeting people, meeting Sam and everybody else who has been doing business online and has grown their business anyway. So thank you, Candy, for your comment, and to everybody, please take advantage of this 24-hour. Well, can I say discount?
Yeah, go on.
Yes, discount. So it's open until tomorrow morning. Tim, sorry to interrupt you. So just...
No, it sounds like a really good time. And yeah, I mean, as Mac mentioned, he can only focus on what he can control. And he can't control what nature's going to do, but he can control, that everyone's going to have a really good time. And I'll have to talk to the boss to see if I can do it. But if we are in Tokyo, we might take a walk and swing by and say hello. I would be with the granddaughter in that case. But it sounds like a great event. And other than that, I have nothing to add. This is great. I could listen to Mac forever, man. So I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thank you, Mac. And I know that you're going to be busier later this year, but still I hope that we can have you at some point, maybe in early summer or later on, once again here. So I can see that obviously a lot of people here in the audience today share Tim's sentiment about listening to you, Mac. So thank you very much indeed. I'm not going to hold you here to keep you here for much longer because it's a working day and there are a lot of things going on for everybody, you too. So thank you very much for coming, for being with us, for sharing your this part of your journey. Anyway, the past 2 years, that part. And to everybody who is here once again, I encourage you to schedule your time so that you can be at the party on the 26th of March. And just a few words before we close the room. Mac, please go ahead.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, as always, for having me here. I hope everybody listening has been able to get a benefit from a little bit of my experience. It can be tough for a lot of us who are, running our own businesses, trying to juggle everything. I listened to something from LeBron James this morning that talked about basically viewing kind of your long-term goals as like building a tower, and that every time you do anything that is positive towards that, then you're basically putting another brick in the tower. And I'm sure you guys have all heard this a million times and have your own analogies as well. But it once again just reminded me that even though, it can all get a bit overwhelming at times, every time that you are responding to one email, meeting somebody else for lunch, that at some point, whether it's the next day or the next year, may lead to some other opportunity, which then leads to something else, and so on. That next meeting, that next, that next receipt that you plug in order to eventually file your tax. You're all just building up something that eventually you can look back on and be incredibly proud of. So, I hope you guys all have a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you all very soon.
Thank you, Mac. Yes, it is a long-term game, if I can call it a game. But yeah, it requires patience and consistency and perseverance. So thank you very much again. And to everybody who stayed with us, we'll be here once again next week at 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. Before that, there is the Japanese Politics Room on Sunday morning at 8:20 with Timothy Langley. If you haven't listened to any of the sessions there yet, I'm sure that you probably believe that politics is a very, very boring subject. I assure you that after listening to one or two of those sessions, you'll change your opinion. So if you have time, please join us then again. And that's all for today. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. Thank you for tuning in today. We will be on air next week on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Again, we are looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you!